Mega Man, Jimmy Easy. Come on.
Welcome to Advocacy Help Desk, a network of advocacy leaders sharing best practices and new ideas via this free podcast to help everyone in government affairs get better at their advocacy craft and having a lot of fun while doing it. Now to today's great show.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Advocacy Help Desk. Pull up a chair. It's going to be a good one. As always, this whole show is about helping everybody get a little bit better at their advocacy game, their GR game. We're going to talk about PACs today as well. Super hot topic. I mean, fuego, really, right, Bracken? We've got a lot going on in our industry, new Congress, new president, and I know a lot of people now are starting to settle in and think about, implementing their legislative strategies, and we've got a lot of conferences going on that help spread tips and ideas and best practices. And this show really is trying to fit in that space where you can casually do your work and listen to, hopefully, Advocacy Help Desk, and we can help give you some great training while having a lot of fun. So if I'm not laughing today, I'm not going to be happy myself, because I come on the show just to have a good chuckle and throw some things against the wall and see if I'm right, if I'm wrong. That's my role here on Advocacy Help Desk. Brian.
And we missed you, Andy. And we missed you.
Brian, tell us a little bit about who's on the help desk today. I know we got Nick here who's been doing a great job of hosting, and we really appreciate that. And hopefully he'll keep going with us throughout the year. I think
we are lucky today to have two of the top experts in the field. I know they will both tell me I'm wrong, but I'm not. And I say that because they both answer questions from people every day, all day. And so we're really lucky to have these two because they give us a great perspective on, frankly, what folks are asking, right? What they're talking about, what people want to know. These are the front lines of folks who are, both Kristin and Nick are sitting there every day getting these questions from members, from public, from trade associations, from corporations, from nonprofits, from everybody and anybody saying, hey, what are folks doing on this? And what are folks doing on that? So we are very lucky today to have Nick DeSarno back on, a fantastic co-host of ours at Public Affairs Council, leading the grassroots advocacy and digital side, and Kristin Brackemeyer, who leads the political action committee side, the PAC side of things, and digital on that side as well. And so the two of them, it's great. It's fantastic. Yeah. Welcome to both of you.
Neither one of these people have been busy at all.
No, not at all. Not at all. So really, it was basically an open calendar of, pick whenever's good for you because we have nothing going on. Yeah. I am great. I am excited today to talk through basically a couple of things. One, we just came off a fantastic advocacy conference. Again, they'll tell me differently, but I find it to be one of the premier conferences for the topic, obviously, around. And so I want to touch a little bit on that today. And Nick, I'm going to jump to you in a second. And then we're really lucky to have Kristin as well to talk through the political action committee side, the PAC side of things. And luckily enough, there is the PAC Conference, the PAC Conference coming up at the end of this month. And so we'll put in a good word for that. For those who haven't attended either or both, they are both fantastic. But Nick, it is great to see you. Tell us a little bit more about the Advocacy Conference.
Well, first, I think Andy asked me to co-host a couple months ago because he was really busy. I thought I'd do this for 3 episodes, and I don't know what episode count I'm on. But it's been really fun, and honestly, the feedback's been really great. A lot of the folks that listen to it have emailed me when I've been talking about something else with them and said I caught this episode and it's been great. And so that's just been wonderful to hear that folks in the advocacy space at, companies, associations, whether they be trade or professional or advocacy groups have all kind of taken to this podcast. And so that's been really, really fulfilling for me, at least. So I'll do it as long as you have me. But as far as the Advocacy Conference goes, this was our first virtual one. I think we were on 47 years of the Advocacy Conference. Wow. Unfortunately, we had 1 year where we got canceled because of snow, but we had it later on that year. This is the first time that it was actually virtual, though. So that was an interesting concept because we could pull in different speakers who maybe would not have normally come down to Florida or Las Vegas or Texas for just a 45-minute session. So that was really awesome that we were able to do that. We could pull people that, not that they were like of a higher caliber normally than we have, just people that are a little bit busier to have tighter travel schedules.
Sure.
So that was awesome.
Yeah.
And then we had people that really were from kind of across the country who normally potentially couldn't do it because they had kids that they normally need to take care of, or they have an incredibly busy, travel schedule around that time of year. This is when state legislators are going into session. So we had a lot of people that said, like, listen, I never can go because 6 state legislators, sessions that I'm responsible for are all active. But this year I can because it's recorded. And so even if I can't make something live, I can see it later on, those types of things. So we had a great kind of turnout of 560 people, which was a record for us.
That's amazing.
And some of the sessions we're getting, people are reviewing it sometimes. Yeah. So they're getting like 600, 700 views on some of them. And people constantly telling me, like, I can't wait to go back and see this one because I went to this one live. And so that's also the nice benefit is that you actually get all of the content. Whereas when you're actually at one of these conferences, you have to choose which breakout session you're going to go to.
Yeah.
So that's a unique feature. So all of that turned out to be, kind of really unique experiences. The other thing that I noticed was that the virtual format kind of helped was people had a chat box during the actual session, and they were just putting in their kind of thoughts and ideas and perspective into that chat. And normally that would all be like, I don't know if it would be conversations that happen at the bar afterwards, or just lost kind of thoughts and interactions. And I thought that was really cool that people could say, like, actually 100% agree with that. What she just said. It happened to me when I first started working in the space, or whatever it is, kind of their opinions on what the speakers were presenting in real time. And then we had a second kind of session a section for their questions, so they didn't get lost in there. And I thought that was really cool that people could just give you immediate feedback.
I want to take one step back. I think one of the great things that this is, and I hate to call it a loss leader, right? But the concept is this conference is great in person. It really is, because you meet everybody, you talk to everybody, you see everybody up close, you exchange ideas. And Kristin, I'll get to you in a second, because I feel even more that way about the PAC conference, where it's, we're not all competing for the same grassroots activity. In this case, we're competing for our employees to participate. And so we can really be more collaborative. But in that loss leader thing, Andy, you've seen this too, pricing for some of these conferences, just quickly on the association side, you may drop some of the pricing now, knowing or hoping that you get more people in the door to understand what you're doing, so that next year when you're back in person and maybe the price does go up a little bit, they're more willing to pay that price because they get what it means and they understand it better now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I like these conversations because I'll have to do this myself, running events and things like that with our association. And I think it's beneficial for folks who have never maybe run an event before to kind of appreciate the hard work that goes into not just setting up the content, but setting up the structure. It is difficult to figure out how to price something that is super valuable in a digital environment that still helps people with limited budget. And we have the same issue. Is the first thing that gets cut at shoe companies that we deal with is education, consultants, things like that. So there's no travel budget for educational events. Yep. It's all based on business. So if you're selling a pair of shoes, or you're going to Asia to work at the factory, if it's on the product itself, there's budget. If it's anything else that's ancillary to that, there is no budget. So it is extremely difficult to figure out how to price it. And then we'll all have to talk about how we price it coming out. But I do think they'll be hybrid. So I to Nick's point, the great thing about virtual is you can see all those, you don't miss anything as an attendee. But as an organizer, you get all that intelligence. You get to see all those chats and really understand what's driving, how people are coalescing around these issues and ideas, like what's important. And sometimes that's really hard when you're trying to figure out where you're putting your training and resources to skill people up in this industry. It's like, okay, are we going down there? We're skilling up on this? Is this the right area? And so those chat boxes, I think, is really interesting to see what people care about, what they're passionate about. And then you can, as an association representing all these public affairs professionals, tailor it to exactly what it is and keep going down that line. I think some of us are just going to take hits on budgets for the next couple of years, and we'll be stronger later for it. And it is just the way it is. And the content is the king. And if you're doing good content, which these conferences are, I mean, listen, it's critical that you attend these things just so that you hear new ideas that are being passed around. We started our podcast.
Let's take that. So,
Yeah.
Kristin, we'll talk about the PAC conference in a minute, but what were, you led sessions at the Advocacy Conference, you participated in other sessions. What were some of the things that you picked up from the Advocacy Conference, that some of the sessions that you most enjoyed and that maybe thought about for the PAC conference later this month or just in general?
Mm-hmm. Sure. Yeah. Well, congratulations to Nick on such a successful conference. It was, I'm glad that he got to test run it for me and then I get to follow 3 weeks later. I think I just echo, seeing the engagement that was happening, and the sharing of thoughts and opinions, and even just being able to like upvote the questions was really awesome to see like what's on people's minds, what's, front and center for them. I think just overwhelmingly the innovation that happened in the last year and just, people's flexibility and being able to pivot and, make changes, but yet just continue serving their grassroots and advocacy communities was really heartening. And then it was just, in my opinion, it was just one of the, it just felt different in terms of the focus that was put on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I, really enjoyed moderating the closing keynote that focused on what we as public affairs professionals can do better just individually in the profession and then through our organizations as well. That was just a really wonderful conversation. And I think that's going to be the first of many conversations that we have at the council and hopefully in the advocacy space at large. Just a lot of really thought-provoking, ideas and conversations that I think are really going to continue to move the profession forward on a full host of these fronts.
You're spot on. It was a fantastic session, both on the second day with Lily, who talked through some of the organization of it and action taking versus the last day 2 of the larger conversation. And just so our listeners know and viewers know, we're going to dive into DE&I in other episodes with further experts and other conversations that we have. And so don't look at us pushing that aside here. That is a conversation that needs to be had and will be had in further episodes in the future. I agree with you. I love the question upvoting was great as well. And you're spot on, Andy, as well with the intelligence gathering that was happening, because it's a great way for associations and groups and everybody to say, okay, this is what people are asking. This is what they're commenting on. These are the sessions that are most viewed. I thought it would be this session, but it's really that session. So there's a lot of great things that can happen when you, as Nick did, run a fantastic digital conference where the attendance was great and you had a lot of new voices and a lot of new ideas and a lot of new things. For me, one of my favorites, I'll start with just the kickoff one of building capacity. I thought that was a great session, Nick, of, if you're building for a vote now, fine, but you also need to be thinking about building capacity, because that's one thing we always talk about is advocacy is so much more than letters and phone calls and tweets. It's about the people moving the dial and getting them involved and keeping them involved. And so I thought that was a great session that you moderated then, Nick, of just bringing those folks together from different perspectives to talk about how it's really about building capacity and building for the future.
Yeah, I think Brian and Andy hit on a good point too when they said this is kind of going to be getting just more people involved, in this conference is going to be important, and they'll come, maybe it's not next year or the year after, but as budgets kind of return, it's going to make us stronger. Yeah, that was our entire goal, and so we actually set up the conference so that people could bring larger teams for a very low price.
Yeah.
And we had a ton of people took advantage of that, and that's how PAC Conference and the Advocacy Conference are growing. Is through the kind of more team-oriented. On the topic of kind of building capacity and that session where we talked from kind of grassroots organizers who worked on the campaign side of things and what they saw in 2021 or 2020 and what they're seeing now in 2021. Obviously, there's some elections that did actually already take place in 2021, which is crazy, like the Georgia special, is, one, you have to have some data and analytics that is telling you something so you know where to drive your actions, right? One of the big things that always really bothers me about data is that people think that it's like some magic, thing that's going to lead them directly into the hands of success. And it's no. Data just helps you make better decisions. That's all. You still have to make a decision, and it's still going to be somewhat based on a little bit of your gut, your intuition, kind of that but there's obviously some science to it, and that data is telling you something, right? Like, where is it really leading you? What is that data actually trying to tell you? And I think that got through in that session of these two professionals who had been working in campaigns for a while on different sides of the aisle, both kind of reiterating, like, listen, we got to make some tough decisions about where to spend money, what ads to run. And while we had more data than probably any of these other public affairs and advocacy groups practitioners will ever have, it still comes down to you need to make that decision. And I thought that was important. And yeah, I think throughout the conference, there was a lot of innovation, like Kristin said, about people who just didn't take kind of no for an answer this year and say, like, like the easy stuff was like, let's hold a virtual fly-in. But the harder stuff is like, let's get these members of Congress to do virtual visits. And they're like, bad at, IT for the most part. They're doing it on their phone, maybe on the way from one district office to another. Like, there's just so much logistics. And I think that's what was nice for other people to hear this year was like, I feel like I'm busier than ever. And I feel like sometimes I'm not as effective, right? Because I don't have that in-person relationship. And it can be really disheartening, I think, on the advocacy community. And this conference just kind of energized people. And it was really, really positive because everyone kept seeing these like really nice comments in all the sessions. I got so much positive feedback. It was really overwhelming. And so much so that I actually haven't even thanked all of our speakers yet. Normally I send them a nice email. I haven't even gotten to doing that yet, because when you have 570 people or so attending the conference, and then you're getting all these emails about like, I love this session. Can you tell me about this? And you're trying to keep up. It's been truly amazing. And so I know the PAC conference, we have a lot of more pressing issues, especially. And we've
Good segue, Nick. Good segue. Good segue.
But I think that's gonna only continue. Unfortunately, if you're a PAC professional, I don't think this is gonna go away in 3 months or 6 months or a year. Mm-hmm. It's just a new part of being involved, and I think for government affairs professionals too, as well. If you're in any form of influencing or advocating your organization's policy positions, especially if you're a company, mm-hmm. you're going to need to know how to defend that going forward. Yeah. And you're going to need to be much more strategic going forward, and much more transparent.
Kristin, we basically turn this over to you now. It is the Kristin show for the next 20 minutes. No, but Nick brings up a great segue and a great point of there are so many conversations that are happening now out there about what PACs, again, misconceptions again, like we had you on the show last time, talking about misconceptions then. It's only worsened. Mm-hmm. And we hear, well, this company is not giving to X or this company is not doing Y. And to walk us through a little bit about some of the conversations that you're having these days and some of the tough decisions groups are making, some of the misconceptions that are out there. And as we talked about before we even started recording today, some of the conversations you're having with journalists who are getting it entirely wrong because they don't fully understand the whole concept and some of the things that you guys are working through.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And just thank you again for having me. It's an incredibly important conversation that the community is having. And that I think we're all, as PAC professionals kind of working through together. I mean, it's hard to even know where to start. It's been a crazy, month or so now since the, horrible and sad events at the Capitol on January 6th. And the response, that from companies and associations really across the board and receiving, I think both internally and how, they initially respond to something that they were very, sad and upset and horrified by as well as, all of us as Americans and advocacy professionals, as well as, the external pressures from media and, other kind of accountability groups looking at political giving and to those 147 objectors. So I think initially there were kind of, some knee-jerk reactions happening. There was this pressure to very quickly come out and, make a decision on what you're going to do with your political giving going forward. So we saw kind of a series of things happening, and the council quickly surveyed our members The number one question I was getting, right after January 6th was, what are other companies doing? What are other associations doing? Where's everyone at on this? So just, trying to get data from the community and provide folks with kind of an across the board sense of where things are at, I think was really helpful. And then we've since, as the situation's evolved, continued to survey and try to understand kind of where organizations are at this point with either pauses or, thinking about how long those pauses may last. So just a little quick updated data kind of as things stand now. We actually are releasing the results of our second survey today. And that will show that 43% of organizations have paused all giving across the board. We had about 70 organizations that responded to this second survey. 19% said they haven't taken a formal pause, but they will be evaluating recent events when considering all future contributions from their PAC. 17% paused to the 147 objectors, and then 13% are still in the process of reviewing their contribution policies. So I think the dust has settled a bit, whereas most people kind of have an idea of what their initial response will be. There's still a lot of conversations happening with corporate leadership and PAC boards and government relations teams. It's certainly a conversation really across organizations that are happening. But I think the biggest questions now for the community is how to move forward, and what does a restart or what does resuming contributions look like? What are, some folks are still kind of trying to determine what are the benchmarks that are going to lead them to start contributing again, particularly, when it comes to the 147, for those that, haven't determined that they're not going to support them this cycle, which is the majority at this point. What does that look like? What do the benchmarks look like that will cause them to consider? Will it, I think it'll probably be a case-by-case basis for the remainder of the cycle. So there's kind of been the member side of it from the council, of just reaching out and talking to our members. I think we've had conversations with probably almost 100 council members, just trying to help them think about what their response will be, give them insights from across the community. But we've also been trying to put a lot of resources out about just better understanding around corporate PACs. I mean, it's unreal when you're reading some of these stories still to see just the misconceptions and, just the way that corporate PACs are described, which just doesn't take into account how limited they are, how transparent they are, the regulatory environment that they already exist within. So as Nick mentioned, we've had a lot of conversations on background with reporters. We've provided them with, data around how corporate PACs, engage in their contribution strategies, how their governance processes, how many PACs already have criteria that take into account character and integrity and other issues. So it's, that's kind of the side of it that doesn't get as much, I guess isn't always out there as much, just these conversations trying to help journalists and the news media that, are not covering this day in and day out, but are writing a story about the corporate responses to better understand how corporate PACs operate.
There's a lot here. It was really tough watching what happened and then trying to figure out how we talk to people about it, what we were going to do with our PAC.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of and it was like multiple, right? It was like every day I had a different opinion or a different idea, and we were trying to analyze something differently. This is the thing. I think a lot of what's happening is just general education of civics is so lacking in the US. I mean, obviously part of the reason for the attack was a lack of understanding about certification of the election. A lot of misunderstanding from political reporters that don't understand the technical aspects. I mean, in terms of corporate PACs, corporations have shareholders that they're responsible to. What do you think they're going to do? There's so much transparency and so much oversight across the board. We're not talking about a candidate pulling funds, to go out and place ads and things like that. We're talking about corporate PACs that are on, most of them on New York Stock Exchange, who have a ton of regulatory oversight, plus the shareholders. They're not going to let them get away with something, illegal that may threaten the brand or a company. So sometimes it's just common sense around a lot of this stuff. But I think, and I want to hear more about the conversations that both at the Advocacy Conference, like where things are trending in 21, what people care about, also with PAC Conference coming up as you guys try to formulate this. But I think some people listening to this today need to think about this. I think for a long time in advocacy and probably in PACs too, we've had a house we've been painting, but the inside's been rotting a little bit, meaning what's our values? What's our structure? How we make decisions faster, better, more transparent is built upon that foundation. And I think we've just neglected it because the politics has been normal for so long. And then all of a sudden it's become populist and we forgot, the house needs to be rebuilt and reinforced. And maybe we need to add some additions and the paint's not cutting it anymore. So I think these conversations we're having it really comes down to values as to how we want to talk to our shareholders, what they care about when they're giving money to PACs, and then how we allocate that. It's like it's a foundational challenge, I think, and that's why it's so tough, perhaps.
And Nick, jump in, because I know we had a great conversation too at the end of the conference with Jay from NAM and EEI, just in terms of that concept and those conversations that they're having with their membership about those pieces.
Yeah, here's kind of two thoughts on Andy's like great point about that. Is so on the civic side and on like the good governance side and just honestly supporting democracy, some of these companies, Microsoft being the first to really announce it, are when they just came out with an announcement, I think last Friday, about what they're going to do with their PAC. They're going to rename their PAC. They're doing all these other transparency things. They're stopping the giving for this cycle to any of those 147 Republicans. What they mentioned is what they want to do is promote democracy amongst legislators in the U.S. specifically. And they're looking for ways to do that through their PAC and their government affairs program. That's going to be huge. Microsoft is a leader in government affairs. They've always been, for the last 10 years, post kind of the antitrust issues that happened in the 90s with them. They took a real strategic look of government affairs being core to what they do as an organization, and how business can operate hand in hand with government. And so I think they're super sophisticated in that sense. And so we're looking to help folks like that do that. The other thing that I think is important, kind of two other things, is one, your PAC is not everything about your government affairs strategy, right? It's just like a tool in the toolbox. And one thing that you have to kind of consider is if you have a PAC, but you don't have a grassroots program, you are really opening yourselves up to trouble potentially, because your employees who are giving to that PAC, unless they're getting constant information from it, may not really fully be educated on all the civics and all of the why your government takes, or why your company takes a position on this with the government, what policy issues your company cares about. All of those educational elements usually come through a grassroots program. Some PAC programs include it, but mainly the PAC programs are more, kind of fundraising driven. And so I think organizations that are not leveraging their employees' ideas and thoughts around government affairs issues and collecting them, and then hopefully getting them to become advocates and supporters of what they're trying to do in DC or in the state legislators, they're missing an opportunity. And the other one is, PACs are going to become more sophisticated in their giving criteria. They're going to do kind of scoring or indexes, is what we've heard about. And I think that's going to happen quicker, like Andy said. Like, they're going to be able to look at individual lawmakers or candidates and really look at their full picture of them very quickly, and how those values of that member of Congress or candidate matches against the values of that company. But
Kristin, do you see that expanding, that sort of indexing, that scoring, that value concept? Is that something that you're hearing a lot about?
Yeah, that's probably the biggest question that we're getting now, is like, how do we objectively look at this piece of criteria? I think updating and changing for PACs, like looking at how they can update or change their criteria, and then how they can kind of try to more objectively measure that criteria. is the key right now. And that's one of the things we stress is like, this isn't just a one-off, like, oh, we need to throw something in our criteria. Like, this is really a journey from the PACs that I think that are out in front on, having already updated their criteria, having already tried to kind of integrate their corporate values into their PAC giving. The first thing they've said about this is like, this is an evolving journey. We're continuing to have conversations. We're continuing to kind of reevaluate. So yeah, as Nick said, I don't think that that's going away. And I think that just trying to be more thorough about every single contribution that's going out the door, even to leadership, even to those that are on, key committees of jurisdiction that maybe 10, 15 years ago would have been no-brainers to contribute to, is just, that's going to be the norm now.
I would also say like what this does is, and I don't think is being talked about, Axios ran a great story on this, but is that corporate PACs, specifically and association PACs, they can only give $5,000, right? So it's not a ton of money. And when we look at that, and then obviously it's pooled employee donations to that PAC, it's not corporate dollars that are going to these politicians. Mm-hmm. But more so than that, is companies are looking for people that are problem solvers. Companies support candidates that are going to help ensure that the business operation that they're running in, the world that they're operating in, is safe, is reliable, has infrastructure, is not prone to pandemic or disease outbreak like we're dealing with right now, right? Like they want to operate in the most safe business environment possible. So they're not going to be supporting fringe candidates on either side, right? That doesn't make sense for them as an organization. And whereas small dollar donations that a lot of these candidates on the far left and the far right, they have to be really loud and very far left or far right to get a ton of small dollar donors. And if you're a moderate politician and you want to survive in DC, and you're not taking PAC dollars, it's going to be really hard for you because you're going to get outflanked on the left or on the right by someone who can raise a lot more money than you can. Yep. And if you're not willing to stake out that area, to build a massive email list, to tap into to those far left or far right groups, then you're going to have a hard time. And so I do think PAC contributions, and there's been academic studies about this, do moderate members of Congress. And that's been nice, especially now, if you're a member of Congress and you're looking at, okay, if I come out with these statements and I know 400 companies that have a PAC and 300 associations and 200 other groups are all going to stop giving to me if I come out and say this outlandish thing, I'm going to be more careful with my words. But if you know that you're never going to get that money, or you've decided to not take it, and you need to raise money that week, you might say something outlandish on a fundraising email to get someone to click donate. And so I think it's a force there.
Yeah, I love that. You're spot on. There have been a lot of really great articles in the last few weeks that I know you both have had input on in the background for both of them on that concept of, folks that say they're not going to take employee dollars are leaving themselves open to the fringe candidates that are taking money from everyone and being absolutely crazy because that's where they get more money for. And I appreciate that. I really love the scoring criteria concept and conversations you guys have had, because I think that it changes the conversation that we've had over years of you're spot on, Kristin, in terms of, that key jurisdiction, that key legislator, et cetera, isn't necessarily a given for your giving anymore. There's the tagline. But it's, you're adding in other criteria to that now. And so that's you're having a lot of those conversations these days.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, folks know that there's going to be a lot of scrutiny over first quarter, second quarter filings. And so, and don't get me wrong, this is something that corporations, associations, like they want to be leaders in this area. Nobody wants to feel like I think there's an awareness that corporate values and brands and the intersection of political engagement and PAC giving is very much colliding, right? And that's not going away. So I think there's just going to be a lot of careful consideration over what the strategy on the political engagement front looks like over the next 6 months to a year, really for the rest of the election cycle and probably continuing on.
Can I just chime in here really quickly? Because I just want to share, because I'm probably the one person on here who can share outlandish things and not get in trouble. It's not outlandish, but in my mind, when we were going through this, and I think a lot of people are going through this, when you're wanting to restrict your PAC payments, that criteria is so important, not just for the shareholders, but for your own values as we work in politics and government. When we look ourselves in the mirror, how do we hold ourselves accountable? And for me, it's all values and foundation, both in my own, where I want to work, how I want to work with people, the transparency and all that comes from that. It's all about the values, right? So initially my thought was these people who voted to say there was fraud and not certify, I found really offensive. And then I went back and realized, like, this is a procedural vote. Look, from a congressional perspective, having worked there, your mindset is built around procedural votes and real votes and knowing the difference and all that. So procedural votes. So then I thought, okay, some of them may have had legitimate concerns. We had the same thing with Democrats who voted that way in 2016. So then it comes down to, okay, who was at the rally trying to incite people, who was raising money off this, like who, so all of a sudden you start falling down. So I love the idea of an index because it creates that foundation where you go back to and you say, okay, I have all these emotions right now. What can I use to moderate my own emotions within the values that our corporation or our association cares about? And it gives me the chance to explain that time and time again and reinforce that to our folks. So I think, maybe there's a way the Public Affairs Council can coalesce a common index that people can adopt and then add to if they need to. I think that would be amazing to help in that way. And then to Nick's point, just as our politics are changing, all our structures changing. I'll go back to the House, but our whole structure with how we engage has changed because of COVID. And now with the PAC issue, it's really interesting to talk about fringe versus, I would say, people who do their job. I think there's an argument that can be made, and I just had a brainstorm on it now, so I don't know how to refine this, but PACs can help members do their jobs. People who have never worked on the channel don't realize how much time a member goes off-site to go make fundraising calls or go and do these crazy newsletters or crazy emails with big bold and underline. And as Nick said, the more fringe they are, the more they are going to rely on those outliers in our society that contribute. But when they're doing that, they're taking away from doing their actual job. And I think that's why I personally think in Congress right now, you see a lot of people trying to build Twitter followers over introducing sound legislation and trying to get things done.
There have been some members that have already admitted to it.
Yeah, so I mean, there you go. But I think there's an argument that PACs can help move legislation because it allows the members to focus on their work and focus on the research and learning why this works here, regulations and all these minutia details that take years to understand in government. But it allows them to do that without having to go out and do all the chicken feed stuff.
I 100% agree with, because there's a lot of ways to fund elections, right? And unless you're someone who is really charismatic, and there's a way that you can raise a lot of money online right now and not be fringe. And you have to have a really great kind of image, charisma. You have to be you have to be like Barack Obama, right? He raised a ton without being on the far left or far right of anything. But that was because he was amazing at, and he still took PAC dollars. He still took large contributions. He still asked obviously very rich people to help fund his campaign, especially initially. But you have to either be that type of person, that candidate. But if you're one of these members of Congress who's not like a middle bencher, right? You don't have, you're maybe you have a great story and maybe you're great for your district, but you need to compete now and raise so much money, millions of dollars, especially when a super PAC can come in and prop up any candidate against you. Yeah. You have to be thinking constantly about fundraising, and I think it is a problem. And if you say, okay, I'm not going to take this one source of fundraising that comes from people in my district, that comes from business leaders and folks like that, then I think you're missing out. It's going to be a difficult kind of position because you have now 147 people on the right that you potentially can't donate to, and then you have 60 or so Democrats that on the left that said they will not take PAC money, so that the window is pretty small of people that you can support with your PAC. And so I do think some PACs are going to look at, okay, normally we only support incumbents. Well, some of these, people that we're not going to contribute to on the left or the right, or that won't take our contributions, we might, open ourselves up to, we'll support someone that is willing to kind of work with us and support a challenger who is more moderate on these issues. And I think you'll see that more. And again, that's where I think kind of corporate PACs can really fit in.
We don't have much time left. Kristin, I do want to talk to you a little bit about the Public Affairs Council's PAC Conference coming up, which is going to deal with all of these issues and how folks are talking about it, and all the different things and wonderful pieces that you've talked through already about, between the criteria, the journey, the all of those pieces. Not to have you shill for it, but let's just talk a little bit about the conference next week. In 2 weeks. Its importance, its tradition, and just all the great sessions that you guys have planned.
Yeah, definitely. So it's funny that when we were building out the initial agenda last fall, it was all about kind of like taking your PAC through COVID and, continuing on in a virtual environment. And we've pretty much, there's a lot that's going to be covered, but we've reworked a lot of the agenda to really focus on the current issues, everything from kind of lessons in crisis communications and how to be thinking about social media strategies and, working with the media, responding to internal and external pressures, all of these things that are really coming to a head right now. We have a great speaker, Leslie Gaines Ross, who is a big name in the corporate social responsibility space. She's going to be talking about, just these kind of pressures and expectations, the changing expectations on companies, as it relates to social issues and how they can continue to just kind of the expectations that are changing on companies. And then obviously a lot that's focusing on disbursement planning and criteria changes. We also have built-in networking sessions. One of the things that was one of the biggest struggles in taking the PAC conference virtual is there's always those really great networking and roundtable sessions. The PAC community, this is their one opportunity really every year to come together in person and just share ideas, talk about challenges, and that's obviously more needed than ever this year. So we're doing our best in a virtual environment to try to still provide room and space for those organic conversations and idea sharing, problem solving, as it relates to everything we talked about, the last 40 minutes or so of what's going on in post January 6th, as well as anti-PAC pledges and, how PACs are responding and, building their disbursement plans and strategies in light of all of those pressures. So definitely just want to encourage everyone and their teams. I think, to Nick's point, one of the really great things about the conference this year is that we have more folks just from, lobbyists and other government relations team members that are going to be attending the PAC conference that, wouldn't necessarily give 4 days away from the office to the PAC conference in normal times. But, now they have the ability to sit at their computer and tune in. And so I think it's just going to be an awesome, opportunity for others to really kind of come into the PAC director tent and think about these issues and learn and, share their perspectives as well.
I think we took something play from what Andy said months ago, is like, you cannot take your in-person agenda and just throw it into like the online format. Right. It doesn't work like that. And I think that's what we've done. That's where we found success. It's like, we're only doing things in the afternoon. So that people on the West Coast can get to it, but also if you're, managing like childcare and all those other things, the afternoon's usually a little bit better for you. We're doing it over a longer period of time. Normally it's only 2.5 days. It's now 4 days. So all those things I think are smart. And if you're looking to run these types of conferences, we'd love to talk to you if you need any help.
I have to tell you, I really enjoyed the Advocacy Conference. I thought that it was a great format. I think you guys are doing it right in terms of lowering the cost, bringing more people into the tent, talking about the different things, putting it at different time frames. So not only a great event, but a great learning lesson for other associations who are doing these events to be able to gather that intelligence to do other things. And in terms of the PAC, both conferences, I find them great because I think that it's a great to repurpose or steal, whatever words you want to use, right? Who am I to say? But you know, and in person that really works well, where we're around a table and we can talk to each other. And I've seen it where somebody has a handout and says, "Great, I'm going to change this from being a plane to a train and hand it off to somebody else," that kind of thing. So you know, it's not the same, of course, but you guys have done a fantastic job to bring that together with the Advocacy Conference. I'm looking forward to the PAC Conference, and then, you know, seeing how it evolves. And there are so many great things we've talked about today that you know, the conversations, no doubt, are going to be wonderful. So thanks to you both for joining us today. I'm about to hand it back to Andy for the kick for the finish, but a great conversation on just all, I mean, I've already written this down of the statistics that you had, Kristin, the journey, the building capacity conversations that we had, our other show that we're going to do, or shows on DE&I later on. So a lot of stuff to cover, a lot of stuff was covered. Andy, please take us out.
Yeah, I think what's great is that, you know, when you guys are seeing some of these key issues come up in the conference, we can use Advocacy Help Desk to kind of flesh that out even further, right? Having conversations after the fact and drill down. And these conversations are fun because they're open-ended. We don't script anything out. It's from the heart. And so I hope folks out there will continue to listen to all our episodes, tell their colleagues about these episodes, and Advocacy Help Desk to kind of help us grow this and train people up and help each other out, because I myself, just this conversation, I'm really encouraged. The work has never been harder for PACs. The work has never been harder for advocacy. But the great thing is all the work we're doing right now is going to be, you know, it's going to blow up for it. It's going to be great going down. Like, never miss an opportunity to face that challenge head on, do good work, build the foundation. Stop trying to paint the house. Please go in and do some
hire house painters.
Work. You know, put some more beams in the house or something. Add to your structure. Talk about your value. Talk about your values. Talk about your association or your corporate value. Like, what are you trying to do? What do you care about? What are you passionate about? Pour that into that, and that will come out down the road. So, you know, take heart, folks. These are really hard times, but we're all doing it together. No one person in advocacy or PAC is facing anything that someone else isn't facing. We're all together, but the work is meaningful. It's so meaningful, and it's so good to be in the trenches together on this stuff, and knowing that if we do it right and we build that foundation back again, there's going to be huge opportunities. Like, I just think on the PAC side, I think with all these challenges, it creates such an opportunity for all the people and corporations to be like, we have a PAC. Like, what are we doing with our PAC? I see all this news, right? So we think in terms of sometimes negativity of like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Turn it into an opportunity. Flip the table over, see what you can do, right? Make it an opportunity to educate and empower folks and bring people in and grow the PAC. While you may not be giving money, grow the brand of it, you know? So I think take heart, folks. The work is worth it. You know, I want to thank Kristin and Nick for their hard work to share ideas and tips and bring people together across this. So I appreciate your involvement with this help desk to help spread it out even further. Folks, as always, advocacyhelpdesk.com, full catalog, any audio platform, Apple, Spotify, whatever you listen to it on your walk, listen to it while you're doing your work, listen to it while you're building your house, hopefully with your values. If you have ideas for guests or tips that we should talk about, please let us know, drop us a line. But until next time, please be safe. Double mask if you need to. 12 feet, double up to 6 if you want to be really safe. But take heart.
Please visit PAC.org if you're looking for these.
PAC.org, that's right.
Of course, PAC.org. And PAC.org/jobs, also the best job site in the arena as well.
Tons of resources, Public Affairs Council, Google it, you can find all the information there. Please attend to empower yourself and empower your teams and get great ideas and the way forward. So until next time, keep advocating, keep packing.
Thank you, Eddie.